Welcome and welcome back to today's Equal Pay Roundtable, discussing mothers' equal pay. We have some lovely panelists, and we're gonna get into the conversation in a few seconds, but I need to go over some housekeeping. So today's conversation is brought to you by the Massachusetts State Treasurer's Office of Economic Empowerment in partnership with the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women and the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. This is the third installment of this limited series, and in case you missed it, we will be sharing the link to our YouTube channel where you can watch previously recorded sessions. We have a jam-packed conversation and we have some powerhouses this morning, but again, I do want to go over some brief housekeeping. As you know, this is a webinar, so you will not be able to see each other's beautiful faces, but our beautiful panelists and our moderator. You will not be able to see each other, but you can definitely use the chat. And if you're watching from Facebook, you can use the comment section. This conversation will be recorded and we will be sharing with registrants along with any links and resources that we talk about today. So if you haven't registered, there is still time. You have until the end of our conversation today to register. And the link pictured, just kidding, there it is, will be pasted into the chat and into the comments for folks that are looking for it. You can always send your equal pay questions and inquiries to us at equalpayma@tre.state.ma.us and visit us on our EqualPayMA website. And finally, stay tuned for our June 16th conversation titled The Takeout, Women Equal Pay and the Restaurant Industry. We'll have business owners, folks from Chambers of Commerce, and even the Center for Women and Enterprise will be joining us for that conversation. Again, that's June 16th at 11 o'clock. We will drop that registration link in the chat shortly. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it on over to Elena Van Tassel, the Office of Economic Empowerment's Executive Director and Deputy Treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shaitia. I'm very much looking forward to moderating today's panel on mothers' equal pay. Before we get into today's discussion, I'd like to introduce this morning's panelists, and we have a very accomplished panel. All full bios will be on the screen before you. Our first panelist is Maria Rivera-Coteau. Maria is the founder and owner of the law office of Maria M. Rivera-Coteau in Worcester, Massachusetts, where she litigates a variety of family law, criminal cases, and general litigation cases. Maria is a former licensed social worker with the Department of Children and Families. Maria has been practicing law for 21 years. She presently serves as General Counsel and Vice President of the Central Region on the Board of Directors of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition and serves on the Board of Directors of Centro. Thank you for joining us today, Maria. Our second panelist is Maria Papagiorgio, co-founder and Chief Talent Officer for Mom Up. Reem's superpower is people. With her expertise in training and development, she spearheads the team that optimizes the process for connecting job seekers to well-matched organizations. Reem's successful experience consulting and managing several project-based assignments led her to realize the impact and success moms in the workforce can have. Her belief in harnessing the strengths and assets of moms returning to work led her to co-create Mom Up. Thank you for joining us today, Reem. Tara Vargas Wallace is the founder and CEO of Amplify POC. She is also the commissioner and vice chair of the Cape Cod Commission on the Status of Women. She also serves on the boards of the NAACP Cape Cod branch, the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, MLK Junior Action Team, People Against Trafficking Humans, and the Housing Assistance Corporation. And our final panelist is Francia Wisniewski. Francia is the director of the National Early Education and Training Center at SEIU Education and Support Fund. She is also a commissioner for the Hampshire Franklin Regional Commission on the Status of Women. Francia has been a tireless advocate for children, families, women, and individuals. Francia carries other critical leadership positions and is representing the community as an elected town meeting member and the Montague Finance Committee member. Thank you for joining us, Francia, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today with everybody. So without any further delay, let's jump right into our discussion on mothers' equal pay. Reem, I'm going to ask you to start off. Can you tell us more about what the wage gap means for moms and what people need to understand about mothers' equal pay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm super excited to kick us off. Like you shared, I am going to be talking about the wage gap and how it affects mothers. But I would be remiss if I didn't spend a minute talking about what has happened to working mothers over this past year and a half. As many of you know, since February of 2020, women have lost over 5 million jobs, and they account for over 50% of the pandemic-related job loss. The impact may be felt for decades in terms of advancement, pay equity, but also security and stability. And what the pandemic really highlighted, as many of us know, is how much as a society we rely not only on education and childcare to help our society function, but also the invisible and often called the free labor of women and mothers. So in September, many of you know, the McKinsey study came out and showed us that in September alone, nearly 1 million women left the workforce. Mothers were 4 times as likely as fathers to leave the workforce to attend to things like homeschooling and caregiving. By December all the jobs lost in December, 100% of them were to that of women, while men gained employment. And the McKinsey study also revealed that mothers and women were twice as likely to take on homeschooling, 3 times more likely to take on increased house responsibilities and caregiving. So you say, well, what does this have to do with the wage gap? And I really think it's just yet another barrier that women and mothers face in the workforce. And specifically today, what I want to address is what's called the motherhood penalty. And for those of you that don't know what it is just that. It is a phenomenon in which when a woman becomes a mother, she experiences a decrease in her pay. So in terms of numbers, what that means is that for every dollar a father makes, a mother is making 71 cents. With each additional child, she experiences a 4% wage decrease, while a father experiences a 6% increase. And over a year in lost wages, that's somewhere between $16,000 and $18,000 annually that a woman and mother loses in wages. So what is behind this motherhood penalty? Well, it really comes down to 3 things. The first being that, as we saw in the pandemic, mothers and women are really the first to take time away for child raising, whether it's temporary or permanent. We also know that they tend to be the ones who reduce their work hours and work part-time, again, to attend to caregiving responsibilities. The second reason being that many companies are not set up to support working families. And by that, I mean, there are not benefits that it really, whether it's paid family leave, childcare support, offering flexible schedules, they're really not set up to serve the two. And then the third reason is bias. So implicit or not, many employers still believe that mothers are not driven and not committed and not in it for the long haul. And so they're passed over for advancement opportunities. They're also judged whenever they have to attend caregiving responsibilities. And that's really also shown up in this remote model with the blended home and work. Something I want us all as a community to look out for if we return to a hybrid schedule is making sure that it's not the moms that are at home and the fathers that are in the office, because that's just going to invite more bias. So we can't address women advancing in the workforce if we also don't address the power and role of race. So if women and mothers are facing these barriers, for women of color, those biases and whatnot are even magnified. For Black women, they experience the most loss in terms of job loss, unemployment due to the pandemic, not to mention what they experienced within their communities. We know that in over 50% of Black households, mothers and women are the breadwinners. So if their paycheck is reduced, they can't not only meet the basic needs of their family, but they don't have any avenues toward building wealth. Over the life cycle of a woman's career, so let's say 40 years, the average woman stands to lose $400,000. A Black woman stands to lose close to 1 million. And my last sobering statistic for today is that Oxfam recently came out that globally, women lost $800 billion in 2020 alone in income. So today I really share as a community that addressing the wage gap isn't just a win for women. It's a win for society. It's a win for our economy. If we can address that wage gap, we reduce poverty. We inject billions into our economy. And for companies, well, first, they're missing out on incredible talent. But second, we know that companies that have women in leadership fare 50% better than their counterparts. So the panel asked me today to share why we founded Mom Up. And we founded Mom Up on the mission to advance women in the workplace. We do this through increasing access, opportunities, and representation, especially at mid to senior level roles. We don't just want more women at the table, we want women and moms leading the discussion, making the decisions. And so we work to address the very bias we're talking about. We work with women through their career life cycle to help support them in going after these opportunities. And honestly, we believe moms are the best employees. There is data to prove it, it's out there, but we also see it where we sit. And the companies that are faring the best right now are those that are leading with empathy. And who better to lead with empathy than a mom? So in closing, and before I pass it on to my amazing colleagues on this panel, I just want to say, and I've shared this with Shaitia, that I could get really down in the dumps about these numbers, and I talk about them every day. But I also realize it's a moment, and I have to look to the other side of that moment. And it's a pivotal moment for us as a community to really carry the torch and look at this and build that system that never worked, pandemic or not, it never worked to support working mothers. Thank you.
Thank you, Reem, and thank you for pointing that out. And I wanted you to say that number again, about putting the amount lost, $800 billion globally. That's a sobering number.
Yes, yes.
So, next, I'm going to have Francia address some of the massive loss of jobs and income from an affected childcare in the early education industry. Could you talk about that impact?
Yes, thank you, Elena. So I actually kind of start talking about the impact with my own family, not just now, but I put it in perspective. In 2005, my husband was taking a second shift, and I was working a very part-time position. I have a newborn and a preschooler, and we have to make a decision that you know, I needed to keep working part-time. My husband quit his job, so you know, I needed to stay home with my babies, and we couldn't afford childcare at the moment. And, you know, this was a journey that took us for 1 year. And, you know, I was listening to Reem about the motherhood penalty, and, you know, that one of the penalties is not being able to have a childcare system that is strong, and that mothers are not supported, you know, through this process. So by then we qualify for every single service, mass health, and, you know, fuel assistance week, which we were very grateful for, and it was critical as we transition in, you know, through a different circumstances. So, you know, I want to talk right now about childcare as the economic engine to support women. So, you know, if we want to fix, you know, our workforce development, we have to really ensure that childcare have the supports that we have in place. So, you know, as Reem was mentioning, right now with the pandemic, especially, with the schools and childcare closures, that push mostly women. Even if you have a partner, you were at a breaking point to be out of work completely, overloaded. Many people, women stay home, homeschooling their children. Nationwide, 10 million mothers of school-age children went out of the workforce at the start of the year, and and that keeps increasing. So this is super critical. So this week there is an article in the New York Times. It's called "Policymakers Used to Ignore Childcare, and Then Came the Pandemic." So we really understood that the childcare system, which is overwhelmingly formed by women in the field also, not a surprise, is talk about how right now really this needs to be in the foundation. So, parents were left to look at the children, but right now, we need to have a workforce that really understand that this is critical for the economy. So not just childcare as babysitters, but really the support system needed to in the foundation of the children as well, right? We all, not just the mothers, the families, and our economy will benefit from this. So just a couple of things. So first, understanding that is a cliff system. So and these affect mostly communities of color and the lowest income parents who get subsidies. So if you are unable to pay for childcare, or even actually if you earn a little bit more of what you're supposed to earn, you can lose that benefit. So we have that system that we need to fix that allow parents to have some support, even if you're low income subsidized, but you can retain for children to have continuity and for mothers to go back to work. So often what we find actually, so the family childcare systems, happen at home by paid and regulated providers, is the most common childcare arrangement in the United States. Overwhelmingly most common that the center care. And then, as we mentioned, the children and families are facing great barriers, but these childcare systems also need to happen for families that work non-traditional hours, right? With reliable transportation. So, those are other 2 points, like how can we support systems that allow families to work, extended hours so they can be with their families. And then, it's the cultural lenses that disproportionately women of color in the childcare industry need support. They're small business owners, and we need a workforce, like the Chamber of Commerce and other businesses to welcome women and mothers in childcare systems, so we're able to enable them and parents to support children to be ready, to be successful at school. And then I have a bunch of other things. I just want to wrap it up. But, despite this critical role, I just want to say that childcare has been declining in the nation since 2014, 21%. So families are struggling also to find the support system in the industry. And so just I want to amplify that during COVID, these actually hit harder because the challenges by not getting sick, or the barriers, or childcare providers actually paying with their own dime to bring a childcare that is safe for everybody. So this is one of the critical pieces that we need to fix for mothers and to keep supporting the workforce. Thank you.
Francia, thank you. And you did note a New York Times article. We're actually going to try to find that New York Times article about the important role childcare plays. And when we do look, we are going to post it in the chat function. And you coined it as being really an economic engine. And I think that's just such an important term, because I think, like you said, the pandemic's really just underscored just the key is probably even too less of a term, the essential role that childcare does play in our overall economy. Maria, can you talk about what strategies you've seen businesses and employers implement to promote a more flexible and supportive work environment for parents of young children?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Massachusetts Treasurer's Office and the Office of Economic Empowerment for inviting me to be a part of this very important roundtable. And I'm also honored to be here with all these amazing panel of women. So what I have seen actually more bigger companies use in organizations is things like partial paid maternity leave, on-site childcare centers, the use of dependent care, flexible spending plans, some paid sick leave and things of that. But for small business owners like myself, often cannot afford to put in or implement things like childcare centers and flexible spending plans. But instead, we can implement things like flexible work schedules, like allowing for time off for the use of, take care of a sick child, taking a child to the doctors, taking children to after school activities, attending of graduations. Small businesses have more of an ability to sort of tailor work schedules and working with moms and women in this way. I've seen the allowance of flexible work schedules where you overhaul completely the hours worked for the week, like implementing what we traditionally hear often called as mother's hours, quote unquote, to allow moms to work until, say, a time to pick up children from school. Businesses can hire moms for these specific hours. Some mothers can't afford, however, to cut back their hours. And I've seen places, and I've done it myself, allow for, say, the lunch hour to be later in the day to allow for moms to go transport children, pick up after school, drop off to an after school program, and be able to get back to work to complete the hours that they need to sort of structure the workday and the work hours in a way that's accommodating for moms. I've seen businesses allow moms to work from home for either part or all of the work schedule. Specifically during the pandemic and the period of time that the stay-at-home orders in Massachusetts were implemented, I myself paid an IT person to come in and connect my paralegal's laptop to connect to the office server so that she can work completely from home the entire time. And I had a second employee, a legal secretary, who's a mom, who was able to stay home the entire time. I was able to apply for the Paycheck Protection Loan program that they offered so that there was no interruption in their pay and to make sure that I protected their jobs. I've also seen businesses allow for mothers on maternity leave return to work in a phased type of manner, such as returning for half days for a period of time before returning full time. I've seen some businesses change completely, allowing that mom to go to a part-time permanent work schedule. I've seen businesses allow moms to take time to pump breast milk during work hours and providing a quiet space for them in which to do so as often as they need to. I myself have done and allowed businesses to allow moms to bring their kids to work, so long as there's no interruption or safety hazards there. At my law office, I have toys and coloring supplies stocked for when my clients bring in their kids or when an employee has had to bring in their child to work. So those are the main things that I have seen and ways that I've seen moms and women supported in the work environment.
Maria, thank you. Tara, do you want to add anything? Have you seen any other types of strategies in your role?
Yes, thank you for having me. And what I have to add is I'm seconding everything that Francia, Reem, and Maria have already spoken about. But I've seen pretty much the same thing, flexibility with allowing people to work from home, allowing them the freedom to alter their work schedule, letting go of the traditional scheduling expectations, as Maria had already described. Another thing that I have seen is I've seen employers asking their employees what their needs are and co-creating solutions together that work for both parties. But there's always room for improvement, right? So things like supporting access to affordable and quality childcare, addressing the specific challenges faced by migrant and seasonal workers, such as working with governments to support migrant families' ability to access identification and other basic services, guaranteeing that women are not discriminated against based on pregnancy, motherhood, and family responsibilities, things of that nature.
Tara, thank you. And before we move on to the next question, I just want to say, we obviously work for the state treasurer, and in our office, we have 12 weeks paid parental leave following the birth or adoption of a new child. And we have found that to be significantly helpful. And, as studies have consistently shown that when it's parental leave and available to everyone, it also does help close the wage gap because it helps to normalize the taking of leave following a new child. So, and we also have flex time in the treasurer's office. And as the parent of a 7-year-old, that has been, that made a huge difference to my family. My husband does the morning routine. He does the bus, getting my son ready for school, and I do the evening. I pick him up at the end of the day and make sure things are, and being able to have those unconventional hours have made a huge difference. So that it's something that we do in the treasurer's office. Tara, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more. Massachusetts recently accomplished additional paid family medical leave, and many of these benefits are now available. How do we reach moms, particularly low to moderate income communities, who might not be aware of this new benefit? Do you think that the law does enough? What else would you recommend to make sure that especially low to moderate income moms can have this benefit?
Great questions. Well, employers are required to post the information where it will be seen, and they are required to post it in other languages if they have 5 or more employees that speak that language. But social media is a great way to get the word out about things like this. Webinars such as this one are effective. I know both MAWOC and the Commission on the Status of Women have both made this information available to the public via public hearings and so forth. But I also think it's important that this information is disseminated through benefit programs as well, such as the WIC and the SNAP programs, and that places like childcare centers, community rec centers, and the family resource centers also make this information available and accessible. Do I think the new law does enough? I think there's always room for improvement. I would definitely recommend getting feedback from those who have utilized the benefit to see where the gaps are and how it can be improved.
Tara, thank you. Does Maria, Reem, Francia, does anybody want to add anything before we move on? And I should say, as we continue the discussion, to those that are either watching on Zoom or on Facebook, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or utilize the chat feature. We will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So I apologize, I did not mention that earlier, but please don't hesitate to ask some questions. And we were able to post the New York Times article, so that is available in the chat box. So how can we better support moms in wage equity? How can we support them both in the workplace and in the homes as well too? Maria, I'll start with you for that one.
Okay. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, great. How can we better support moms? Well, I think that employers and both small businesses like myself, but all employers need to be intentional and strategic in their hiring. The pandemic has been a major backslide for women's equal pay and employment, especially for mothers and especially for women of color, as has already been discussed at length. Especially if you seek to hire women of color, because the wage gap is the largest there. Look inside your business or organization for candidates that you can promote or train to fill a position. Look to see if you can redesign or change the scope of the position, like from full-time to part-time, as I discussed earlier. Hire or promote based on merit and skills, free from biases related to age, race, family, obligations, etc. Don't use the excuse that it is hard to find them or that moms are not applying. You can contact temp agencies, state workforce and training offices. You can form strategic alliances and partner up with community organizations that work with women and moms to connect with the talent pool of women that you're seeking. Those of us in positions to do so, like small business owners and those in hiring positions, must take bold action to help reverse the backslide and get back on track of doing the work towards pay equality. Don't be afraid to hire moms. They have amazing skills that are transferable to the job market: negotiation skills, communication skills, time management skills, listening, working in a fast-paced environment, managing multiple schedules, problem solving. I can go on and on. It's good business, and diversity amongst the workforce drives the growth and creativity and innovation and profitability for all of us in our economy. We can support moms by taking an interest in their lives and ask about their work-life balance so that they do not feel alone in the workplace and that they feel supported by the employer. I think the employer should also model that work-life balance to the employees as well. I think that's important. I think it's important that we offer them flexible work hours and be willing to train and mentor. We need to pay them well. Women cannot financially thrive on minimum wage incomes. Families cannot move out of poverty on minimum wage incomes. Incentivize them so that they feel motivated and empowered to want to stay because they want to. I think as employers, we can help connect them to services or benefits that can help them stay employed, like agencies that offer childcare services at reduced fees or summer camps. The bottom line is that in order to close the wage gap and maintain women and moms in the workforce, we need to keep them employed.
Maria, thank you. Those are some excellent suggestions. Reem, what advice do you have? Or would you say, what other supports can you think of to help support moms?
Yeah, absolutely. And to Maria's point, we often call our moms these multitasking Jedis, because what have you seen that a mom can't do? And if she can't do it, she figures it out. So my response is really both on a macro and micro level. I have a quote to read from Vice President Harris. Many of you probably read it that are on this call, but she said in the Washington Post, she argued that the economy cannot fully recover unless women fully participate. She said that without affordable and accessible childcare, working mothers are forced to make an unfair choice. And so kind of my macro level response to this is that the pandemic has unveiled that we treat childcare as a mother's problem, a woman's problem, an independent on their own to figure out problem. And I really think it's a business problem. And so, you know, I do sit here probably among many of us on this call who say that we need to really address issues of childcare and paid family leave. And this is all, you know, in the news as we speak, but I still just push on that advocacy. On the micro level, Elena, you said something earlier, and I think it's really addressing bias on many levels, but also making these benefits and support gender neutral. So to see the men taking the time, the men making it, you know, acceptable because they're going to the doctor's appointment and whatnot. I think to similar points of my fellow colleagues today, really working with employees and finding out what it is they need and figuring out what does flexibility really mean? Does it mean adjusting expectations? What are the expectations? What are the boundaries? And so that is really kind of how I think we have to go at it.
Reem, thank you. Tara, I'm going to ask you the same question. How else can we support moms?
So many great suggestions already. I think I would only just add that, you know, advocacy as much as possible, and really supporting each other, and pushing for progressive workforce policies that further quality in the workplace, helping to evolve workplace culture by advocating for ourselves and other moms and celebrating working moms, and really just maybe even taking in a mom as a mentor, or creating some sort of a community where moms can, you know, help each other regarding childcare issues and share in that plight together.
Tara, thank you. And Francia, how can we support moms?
Great. I actually want to just put the spotlight on Elizabeth Hart, who asked a question. How can we, what advice can we give to women and how to approach their employer for flexibility in their schedule? And some people might feel penalized and are afraid to ask. And it is true. I have heard, you know, unfortunately, the policies of companies are independent, right? But I will say that using the power of your local government is, you know, a huge, catalyzer for changing policies. So, you know, right now in the state of Massachusetts, we have 9 regional commissions on the status of women representing each one of the areas. So go tell your stories. One of the things we were able to support and accomplish was the Working Women's Fairness Act, that women didn't have reasonable accommodations before work. If you were expecting a baby, you couldn't have your bottle of water if you were in a cashier, or you needed to stock shelves when you were pregnant and you didn't have a balance. So that's now the law because of the many stories we hear from women in the field. So talk to your legislators. This year, the legislative priorities for this commission on the status of women and the regional commissions are advocacy for the instead of the Common Star, which is a great initiative that brings organizations together and educators to ensure that families have the care solutions they need, and that the children in the Commonwealth are, prepared and taken care of. And that's we're trying to bring this forward as a benefit for the whole Common Star. So if we are able to pass universal child care for all, women, mothers can go back to the workforce. So please talk to your legislators, to your select board members, and have these conversations why it's important to have these pieces in place so women can go back to the workforce.
Thank you, Francia, and thank you everyone for the conversation today. I just think that as we talk about different ways to support moms, it's clear that there's no one silver bullet, that this is, it's a multifaceted issue, and it's going to take really a multi-pronged approach to really to find a solution, whether it's, obviously increasing access to affordable childcare, making sure that there's policies in place for women in the workplace, and also to, like Francia just said, making sure the policymakers are passing laws to support women in the workforce. So I know that there's been some questions in the Q&A and in the chat box. I'm going to turn it over now to Shaitia, who I believe is going to be moderating this section of the panel.
I'm back. Hello. So one of the questions we already answered. Thank you to Miss Elizabeth Hart. The next question, I think it's more of like taking stock of who's watching. Somebody said, do we have men on this call as we learn from these women and these suggestions? I can't tell from our registration list, but I'm sure even if we don't, somebody's gonna tell our peers in on that side of the work. The next question that I see here is from Tamara, I hope I'm saying her name right. Thank you for this enlightening discussion. As a working mom and graduate student, I've been really discouraged by the offered solution of breast milk pumping spaces for new moms. While it seems generous on the company's part, I can't help but think it benefits the company more than the mother. If my child still requires breast milk, it means they're still very little. Rushing back to work for fear of being replaced is an unfair penalty. Surely the generous thing to do is allow moms enough time to complete that season at home before returning to work, reasonably speaking, and not forcing them to cut the mother part out of their working mother title short. Is that the better solution, or is the better solution? I would be curious to hear your thoughts about, and this can be anybody, what you think about that being a generous benefit and versus something else. And then as we're talking, you can ask questions in the Q&A box. There is an option for anonymous suggestions, and you can also use the chat function as well. That was the only comment or question that we had.
I'll take a stab at it. I think I can honestly share I'm stumped, not by the question at all. I think it's such a powerful and spot on question, and that can speak honestly and to even my own bias of not having thought of that. And really, what is the answer? I don't know if my fellow panelists have thoughts. I think, Francie, I think it was you, or it may have been Tara, and I can't remember, I'm sorry, but one of you said celebrating moms and celebrating motherhood. And, it's not, this is a little bit of a tangent that I don't want to get too far off on, but I often say it's not lost on me that, women wait to say they're pregnant because they're afraid of losing their job. It's also illegal to ask if they're planning to have kids or are pregnant. But back to that celebration, what if we celebrated that you're bringing a mom on board and all that she brings? And so in a way, are we celebrating too soon, trying to bring you back and set you up with those support? Are they truly not support services? I don't have an answer to that, but I am curious if anyone else does.
Reem, I just also, going back to the story I spoke at the beginning, when I was, have a baby, I was working at a food pantry, and, I just recall the experience. My boss at the moment was completely understanding of what it means to have this baby with me. I brought the baby to work. And I remember just talking with the families, everybody was really looking forward to come, say hello, but just thinking about like how having this opportunity to be flexible, really made me feel grateful and invested and do my work in a safe and a comfortable place. So I think that when we see, actually this also involves men, right? I remember my husband driving the baby. This is a joint thing for many, right? A family thing. So this is also part of the Pregnant Women's Fairness Act. I also shared the link with you. And I think some of these things are the law. Reasonable accommodations are the law. So please read that link of, what is the Massachusetts law, and you are allowed to request that reasonable accommodation, whatever that means to you, like have conversations with your workplace, that you have a comfortable place you shouldn't be pumping in a bathroom. I see those case scenarios. I was working at a location a while ago, and women were going to closets full of dust, and a women should be able to be respected and have a place that's comfortable for pump, and that can be their home. So when you find the support as a mother, as a family, you are invested, you are more productive. So again, is the law. Talk to your supervisor about the law or your workplace, and talk about improving a safe place for breastfeeding. There are stickers for businesses also that are they're breastfeeding friendly, and they're promoting that within the local towns. When you go, where can you sit, and where can you feel like you can do breastfeeding or baby feeding in a safe place.
Thank you. I got another question. How do you get beyond the good old boys club, places that always promote men and pay men more than women? How do we get beyond that?
I can briefly take a stab at that, because that's a great question, and it's an age-old question. Women have been dealing with this, for centuries, for a very long time. And we have to call it out when we see it going on. We have to be bold. We have to be willing to speak up, because what's been happening for far too long is that we don't say anything. We sort of internalize it. We allow it to make us feel insecure, less than. We don't say anything. We go home and we just, continue taking care of our families and just working. But that has to stop. We have to bring this to the attention of the employers, and sort of, more advocacy is needed around actually this topic, and sort of encouraging women to speak up and to go to their employers and to ask for those promotions that they very well deserve, and to ask for those raises. And document if there's a legal case there to be made. I'm not trying to get on my legalese here, but certainly document, specific instances, because, maybe what it takes is for more women to, bring employers to litigation just to make a change. And I don't know if anybody else has any other suggestions.
One of the things that we talk about often in the Office of Economic Empowerment is really trying to create a pipeline for women to make it easier to get into different roles. An example that we have a Women in Finance program that's for undergraduate women that are interested in finance, because it's a field where women are significantly underrepresented. We bring in female mentors that actually work in the Treasury to mentor these women. And that's just one example, but also, like I said, but creating a pipeline to help more women, work their way up into fields that they're typically underrepresented is another way we can do that. Maria, I don't want to echo some of the things Maria just said, but I completely agree. And again, like some of the things we've talked about here, there's not a single answer, but there's a lot of different ways we have to work to solve the problem.
My next question, or it's more of I think a co-signing of Tamara. I was laid off from my job shortly after returning from maternity leave in 2015. I remember pumping breast milk in my car in a parking garage prior to an interview and feeling like as a country, we are getting it so wrong. We need to support moms better with longer maternity leave, like most other industrialized countries in the world. More of a cosign. But the next question I have is also co-signing our panelists. The panelists have been spot on with their remarks. I work for the Women's Bureau here in Boston. What thoughts or suggestions do you have on how can the Women's Bureau support and or amplify women in the workplace, women returning to work during this pandemic, and other thoughts on these issues?
I want to speak to one of the things that you spoke about, supporting women. I just want to encourage everybody to be a good bystander and a supporter. I recently was talking with a professor from Smith College who also worked with women's studies, and I'm very grateful for the women's empowerment series of the Treasury here. I have attended some of their sessions where I learned actually how to look for my retirement. All of us are always looking, we women need to learn how to ask for what we deserve. We are underpaid, we don't ask for our worth. And I think that please pay attention to the resources that the Treasury is bringing forward, because they do work and they are super helpful. So one of the things you can do is, with your coworkers, strategize ways in which you can, come together. If you go alone, it's harder, but if you come with your coworkers, if you have that situation, strategize, talk to your friends about how can you ask for your, yearly raise or adjustment of salaries. That's completely something you can do. The worst that can happen, is you are told no, but, at least it will happen, but just do that strategy. And, I also appreciate this question about, the women going back to the workforce. Like, I think that this is from Victoria, you're here, is that it is super important that we stop the age discrimination, that we, as a person who is now in the mid 40s, I'm looking also for younger mentors, like find a woman that's younger or older and work together to see what do you learn from each other generations, because this is the workplace. I'm working right now with baby boomers and Gen Xers and Gen Zers. Like, this is what we have in the workforce, and we cannot be, we need to look for each other. How can we make a better multi-generational workplace? We all have strength in those generations. So appreciate the wisdom and learn from the new. Thank you.
I actually have a comment to that also, and I think, to your point, Victoria, so much right now is faced on women who have children and have been forced out of the workforce. And you're reflecting onto the issue that's always been around. And, women who are older and issues of ageism completely still exist. And I can share with you that when we were starting Mom Up, that was a demographic we were especially interested in. So Mom Up was started before the pandemic. And we really believe that there was just so much untapped talent that wasn't being utilized, and how could it be utilized? And so we still work to address that as well, especially because there are such creative ways to get back to work and such tremendous intelligence among so many women that have been out of the workforce for a while.
Thank you. And to expand a little bit, Victoria's question in the chat was, what resources are in place for moms whose kids have left the nest who want to rejoin the workforce at the executive level where they were before leaving the workforce? Not seeing much focus in the general in the national conversation for the 50s moms. Age discrimination is real. So are there any other supports for that type of woman who maybe was in the executive level, say before having children, and now their children are, moved on out of the home? What else can we do to support those moms along with the new moms?
I mean, I think I'm hesitant to say this because it sounds trite, but I think we need a huge marketing campaign, to be honest. I think we need to, it's time again. And that's why I continue to circle back to that movement and the branding of it, and any way we can address bias. And I don't mean it to sound trite, but look at all of us from all different parts of this state and all the different work we're doing and how to bring that together and push it forward to address women in the workplace on all levels.
Rima, I just want to supplement and amplify what you're saying, because when I reflect about who were my past, mentors and supporters in the education field per se, which is my career, they were people who were engineers in agriculture or dietitians. What happened is they were part of a network system. So two things, please reach out to the connections, build new connections, like all of this panel in here, like we have connect each other in LinkedIn, and eventually we amplify the voices of those women. Like we have to keep building that support system. So when you are in a room, again, bring your colleagues forward. Like we just keep elevating each other. So the power of the network is something critical. And who do you know, who do you have, and how would you like to keep connected? And again, thinking that this means that we are wearing the lenses of justice, right? It means multi-age, older generation, going back to that, so that we're also are part of that empowerment and for autonomy, so nobody's left behind and everybody can live their working life or their communities in the society. We need everyone in here.
Thank you so much. I have another question. Just came in from Patricia. I'm expecting my second child this September and will have 2 children under 2 years old. I'm considering not returning to work as I don't believe they'll be flexible in allowing me to continue to work from home or switch to part-time work. I would like to return to work within a year, but I'm worried that I will have trouble finding a job in my field. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom? Is there anything I should do while away from work? And like training or volunteer work?
I can take that. I didn't know if anyone else wanted to take it. I think, again, the plight of womanhood and motherhood is you're always having to think about this on this whole other level. And I think that, I hate to say a perk of the pandemic, if you will, but right now, everyone is going to have gaps. So take a pause on that, do what you need to do. And if there's an industry you want to stay in, if you have the space to do that with 2 kids at home, then go ahead and find opportunities to volunteer. Before you leave, I would definitely talk with your employer, because I think right now, what we haven't talked about is how much companies and employers are losing by not making the needed changes, and how much they lose in hiring. How much it costs to hire a person in terms of literal cost, but also time. And when they don't offer that support, how much they lose, not only in talent, but having to go back at that. So set it up so that they work with you, if that works for you.
I agree with Reem. I think that we need to have the courage to go to employers and have these conversations. And maybe she should just outright ask, if I, choose or need to be out for, say, a year or two, can we put a plan in place? Can I return? Is it possible that there'll be a job waiting for me, maybe in a different department? Just have these, these are the conversations men are having in the workplace, maybe not for child rearing reasons, but for other reasons, and just sort of always power broking, their careers and their trajectories and planning it out. We need to do the same things. We have to have the courage to come forward and have these type of conversations, talk to the employer and find out whether that's possible. And if it's not, why not? What are the barriers? It's take in the information. It might be helpful for the future. When we hear sort of what are the things that are being said by employers, what are the reasons? Because maybe you can come up with a plan for how that can be dealt with and how that can be resolved without needing for the employer to replace that position. We just never know, but we have to be willing to have these conversations in our employment. And I know that a lot of women and mothers are hesitant to have those conversations, and we have to be our own advocates who we have been waiting for.
I just want to throw a resource in here. It's a book called Worth It by Amanda Stenberg, and she also have great tips about, how to plan for transitions. But mostly, I want to also say that a lot of us at some points have feel guilty for not being active and working because we have capitalism in our heads saying that if we're not doing anything that we actually are doing, taking care of our families, that's part of the wholesome and the healthcare. So please do, it's okay for you to be transitioning if you need to do a plan, but any employer that have good practices will understand this in motherhood. So, I actually have hired people and to me it's okay, like you're transitioning, your skills, your value are still worth, and that has to be understandable.
I just had a couple of questions coming at the same time. So I wanted to raise this because I think it's a really good idea, and it's around the same kind of mindset I'm in, at least. Why not publicly celebrate the companies, an example on social media, that make individually hire or make a sort of accommodations for women, publicly campaign of recognition, and create a competitive movement in employment opportunities. I think we have seen something like this with the Boston Women's Workforce Council and their talent compact. But I would love to see more businesses and more of a celebration around those companies that are already doing some of the suggestions that we hear here today. The other question I'm seeing here is there a place that we can go to get those statistics on how much women are losing in the workplace? This is fascinating, but also so empowering. I'm gonna ask this one specifically to Elena, if there's any places that we can go for this information on women in the workplace.
So there's a number of places, and obviously some of the stats are changing because of the pandemic, but we have a great website, EqualPayMA.com, and on there is actually a wage calculator, a wage gap calculator, where a woman can, enter in her age, other statistics, and calculate her estimated losses over the course of her career. And let me tell you, it really quantifies how much you lose, and we put it into different, we don't just have the numbers, we also then put it into, I think it's weeks of daycare, days of daycare, months of rent, cups of coffee. It really shows because, let me tell you, a woman's wage gap starts pretty much the day she enters the workforce. And Reem talked about the motherhood penalty, and it only gets amplified when she becomes a parent. So, and studies consistently show that even in fields that are dominated by women, including fields like nursing, there is a wage gap. So I do encourage you to go to EqualPayMA.com and look at the wage calculator, and that does give you a good estimate over the losses that a woman does face over the course of her career.
You're
Shaitia,
muted. You're muted.
You know, after a year, you think we would know how to unmute ourselves. Thank you all for joining us. I was just saying it is 11:59 and we're going to begin transitioning to close out. I did want to share my screen one more time with everyone before we go. Please stay connected with us. We are, as an office on, Office of Economic Empowerment on Facebook and Twitter. You can submit any questions that we may not have gotten to today to our email, equalpayma@tre.state.ma.us. And again, that website is equalpayma.com, where you can find that wage gap calculator. Something also we didn't mention was the employer toolkit, where folks that are interested in learning about best practices and pay structures, things like that, you can definitely find that on our website, as well as other opportunities to learn about equal pay, including a link to AAUW salary negotiation, trainings, and so much more. Please stay connected with us. As I mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, we will have another conversation on June 16th around the restaurant industry and women who serve in the restaurant industry. And we do hope to see you all again soon. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today on Zoom and Facebook. Please look out for the emails that are coming out after this with all of the links and the resources we talked about today, as well as more information about each of our panelists and the organizations they came with. So thank you again. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next month. Bye.